You have amazing role models like our handsome, dashing president. And you have amazing role models like the assassin, J.D. Vance, our vice president. For boys, be boys.
Amen.
Okay. Whatever that means.
Unmute yourself, big one.
Morning, Queen.
Good morning, King. How are you?
I'm making it. I'm making it on my way to this job that barely wants me there, but I'm still pressing
Why
through.
not? Why not?
Well, since this new administration came in, people of color don't get the same treatment that we used to.
Good night, big one. Okay? I knew it was the reason I wasn't following your ass.
A lot of these barbs will attack when she tells them to attack, defend when she tells them to defend. If you think critically, if you say, wait a minute, why am I bullying this woman online when she literally has done nothing to me? Why are we going after Lotto? Why are we going after SZA? Why are we going after Cardi? Why are we going after Megan? Like, if you sit down and think and say, wait a minute, like, I just like the music, what's happening to the music? You are ostracized from that core fan base. You're seen as not a real barb. Yeah, you heard that last clip right. That's iconic rapper and former gay icon Nicki Minaj sitting side by side with Erika Kirk, the widow of Charlie Kirk, at a Turning Point USA conference in Phoenix, Arizona. And yes, we're talking about the same Turning Point, the organization that led its University of Oklahoma chapter to fire a trans teaching assistant for grading a paper properly. The paper had been poorly sourced, and the argument basically amounted to, these people are bad and demonic. Here's how the Bible backs up my argument. And it didn't even properly cite the Bible. Multiple theology students have said this article was absolutely terrible and this is deserving of the 0 grade. That might be a video of its own, but I digress. Making this entire chain of events more insane and more deranged, just really more confusing, is the fact that while he was alive, Charlie Kirk, the co-founder of Turning Point USA, who Nicki Minaj seems to be happily attending their events, he said that he didn't like Nicki Minaj and saw her as a bad role model for black children.
Right now, black culture is being held captive by influences, songs, and role models. I mean, Nicki Minaj, Cardi B.
Okay, Nicki Minaj is causing dads to leave the home.
Hold on a second. I don't think that's a good role model for 18-year-old black girls. I don't.
And I really do find this odd because saying that you don't like Nicki Minaj or saying that you don't agree with her in any sort of way seems to really be a cardinal sin for Nicki, so I'm really wondering what's exactly happening here.
Bitch, and I know you listening right now, you fragment foot bitch.
And this is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to some of the other things that Charlie Kirk has openly said and openly expressed, including his massive beef with Martin Luther King for some reason.
But I can say declaratively, this guy is not worthy of a national holiday. He is not worthy of godlike status. In fact, I think it's really harmful.
If you're going to beef with a historical figure, please make it one that's not universally liked by almost everyone in the modern day. And this beef also extended beyond Martin Luther King Jr. into black pilots in general.
Like, I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. Because of DEI, it begs the question, when you see a black pilot, you wonder, you say, I hope they are qualified.
I think it's incredibly interesting how an artist who is not only a black woman herself, but has repeatedly kind of positioned herself as an artist who is for the black community, is able to rationalize and wrap her head around supporting this organization which has loudly and proudly spread racist beliefs and racist ideas about black people, while also disparaging civil rights heroes like Martin Luther King. But why would Nicki Minaj cozy up to an organization which loudly and proudly was led by a person who very openly espoused racist ideology, consistently devalued black accomplishments, and even questioned whether black people had the proper mental state to do certain jobs? Why is it so easy for so many of these celebrities to stand behind Donald Trump? And why did Nicki Minaj go MAGA? And why does this even matter? Like, why are we even talking about this? To be fully honest and transparent about this entire topic and just this video in general, this is one that feels very personal to me in a very parasocial way. If my passion about the topic hasn't made it fully clear yet, I am a former barb, a former fan of Nicki Minaj. Like so many other gay black boys, I was proudly a barb at some point because Really, her music, her personality, her style, and at one point, her very proud support behind the LGBTQ community really acted as a draw for me to like her and support her. And you know, before she was telling boys to be boys, like she did at the Turning Point USA conference, she was actually quite a friend to many queer people. She went on RuPaul's Drag Race, and the community of barbz really, honestly, before, we're gonna talk about the barbz, okay? But before it became super toxic, it really was a place for a lot of young gay black people to find community, especially for so many black queer people who really have it hard when it comes to like finding a community and finding a space where they feel welcome. Oftentimes, a lot of black queer people are not only ostracized from their other black peers due to homophobia, but they also face stigma due to racism in a lot of gay spaces where, I gotta be honest, a lot of these white gays do not want to interact with a lot of black gays. And that's not just me being very surface level trying to divide people, it's the truth. There's a lot of discrimination in some of these spaces, and it's a very big problem. I'm honestly a little bit lost on where to start when it comes to Nicki Minaj's political activities and her political beliefs, but I suppose we can start with some of her more recent art. So before this election cycle, back in 2016, it was very clear that Nicki, while she wasn't super openly political all the time, she would put political barbs and political jabs in her lyrics, and she was not pro-Trump by any means. Here's her reacting to a reporter asking her about Trump. I believe there's another clip of her on a red carpet when somebody asked her about Trump, that Trump was attending the event.
Just talked to Donald Trump, and I told him that you were performing tonight. I asked him if he was a fan of yours.
Oh.
What do you think he said?
He probably said, "Who's that?"
No, he didn't. He said he's a fan.
Really? Donald Trump?
Surprise you?
Yes.
You ever thoughts on Donald Trump?
No, no thoughts. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I voted for him actually.
Oh yeah? What do you like about him?
I wanted to bring the job back to America.
And what country are you from?
From America.
She seems very neutral to negative about him. I'm not really seeing a, oh, I really love Trump kind of vibe from her. Now, I did find a lifesaver, this article by them.us. I will be linking this article because it's been very helpful. It's called A Timeline of Nicki Minaj's Descent into Trump's MAGA World. But first thing it brings us back to is 2010, where she made her stance on Trump very clear. And I really found this interesting because it's like, Trump, while he was a very relevant figure in Hollywood and like a celebrity kind of person, reality TV star, he was not by any means like a mega celebrity, if that makes sense. I know I had no idea who he was before 2016, but that might just be because I'm not really like, I wasn't really super engaged in pop culture before 2016. I just want to offer some context on Nicki Minaj's kind of timeline. She was very much a boisterous character in 2010, but she also had to fight so much. I feel like she was actually going against giants at this time, having people pray on her downfall. Like, she had to face more cemented rappers who didn't really like the fact that a new girl was coming onto the scene, like Lil' Kim and Remy Ma, who saw her somewhat as a threat. She had to face record executives who were probably questioning the profitability of a female rap artist, and she really, at this time, put all those voices to shame. Pink Friday was a hit. It was like, I think, a massive pop culture moment. So many of the songs on there are still super relevant, still super talked about. You got like Super Bass, you've got Starships. So many songs on that album were literally my childhood, which makes it all the more disappointing that the person who's behind this amazing artistry turns out to be a not so great person and supports somebody with awful politics. In 2010, Nicki actually called Trump out, using him as a blatant example of the misogyny that I think runs rampant in our society. I mean, I don't just think it does. It's quite literally a fact. Here's the video.
When I am assertive, I'm a bitch. When a man is assertive, he's a boss.
Bossed up.
He bossed up.
Yeah, he bossed up.
No negative connotation behind bossed up, but lots of negative connotation behind being a bitch. Donald Trump could say, "You're fired." Let Martha Stewart run her company the same way and be the same way. Oh, evil. But Donald Trump, he gets to hang out with young and have 50 different wives and just be cool. Oh, Donald, we love you. Donald Trump. But when you're a girl, you have to be like everything.
And it just really made me gag because Nicki Minaj went from calling out Donald Trump in 2010 to in 2025 standing right behind him. Like, the contrast here is insane. The switch up here is insane. And it's just really odd and interesting to see this version of Nicki because while I listened to a lot of these songs, while I heard a lot of this music, I didn't really see a lot of her at this time. Like, I was 5 years old in 2010. Not to age myself, y'all, but I was, 5 years old. I wasn't really sentient. I wasn't really conscious. So to see this version of Nicki where she's very much on the come up, where she's not really a cemented name in rap. I mean, she is, of course, Pink Friday too. Or she is, of course, Pink Friday. She's kind of getting there. Whereas what I was kind of coming into barbhood, being more of a child, I was kind of around when she was much more cemented in rap and much more seen as like a legend of female rap. And it's really interesting to see how, at least in this clip, she seems so politically conscious, so aware of the blatant inequalities of the rap game. And yet now we see her constantly bashing any woman who dares to push back against her or even challenge her status. Like, and a lot of these women who come out against her, or a lot of these women who she claims are coming out against her, I should say that because a lot of them aren't actually coming out against her. I feel like it's more so a case of, well, I don't even want to say insecurity, just kind of like not wanting to pass the baton, not wanting to give the new girls a chance, and feeling like these girls have to give you every single modicum of respect. It's like when you start working a new job and the person who's been there for 25 years hates you for some reason, and you have literally no idea why. You're literally just clocking in to do the same job, and this person hates you, has a grudge against you, somehow thinks you're trying to replace them, or the company's gonna fire them and replace them with you. It's just a weird dynamic, and I think it's not really productive. It doesn't really help in any way, and it's really fueled by some of the people in her circle, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the video. But after this, we have Nicki Minaj's famous verse in 2012, "I'm a Republican voting for Mitt Romney. You lazy are the economy." And once again, this does really sit with me because not only do we have Nicki Minaj, who is really so behind Democrats that Obama really understood that this was a joke. Like, she made a Twitter apology to kind of explain behind the bars, and she was like, "Thank you so much, Obama, for understanding me." I can pull it up now. Obama later commented on the track saying that he didn't believe Minaj was actually supporting Romney, rather that her rap style usually includes different characters such as Harajuku Barbie and Roman Zelensky. Minaj responded on social media, "Thank you for understanding my creative humor and sarcasm, Mr. President. The smart ones always do. Sends love and support." We have a Nicki Minaj who is so behind President Obama, very more liberal-minded. I think there was a lot of people who were behind Obama back then and kind of switched, but we'll see what Nicki kind of does towards 2015, and it's not like what you would expect from her. You would kind of expect her in 2015, 2016 to kind of go into the Trump camp, and she kind of tries to, but she doesn't really like what she sees. This does sit with me because not only do we have a Nicki Minaj who's so behind Democrats that she made she made an internet apology to Barack Obama, and he understood that that was satire. But it's also wild to me to see that she's understanding a lot of the Republican and conservative talking points that we'll see. The lazy line may seem super simple, but it also harkens back to, I think, the concept of a welfare queen. The idea of a welfare queen really kind of just is emblematic of a lot of the racism that is used to justify the cutting of programs like welfare. Like, the idea of a welfare queen, basically someone who's scamming, who's using welfare, she doesn't want to work a job. And in reality, a lot of people, most people who are working welfare have to work jobs. Most people who are working welfare have to work jobs or they can't work a job. And there really isn't this widespread welfare abuse. Like, the idea of widespread welfare abuse has been really used as a justification to cut welfare programs, to dismantle safety nets for people. And this isn't just a conservative doing or a Republican doing. I think it's more important to see the political system in America as center-right versus far-right, because both of the political parties here, they kind of try to appease each other, especially the Democrats. I'm looking at you, Bill Clinton, because he did sign a lot of welfare cuts into law and kind of reiterated a lot of this rhetoric, this idea that people were just lazy, that if they just got a job, their problems would get better. When we all know now, especially as the economy keeps getting worse, especially as inflation keeps increasing, we know that you can be very jobful. You can have lots of jobs. You can work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and you can still barely afford rent, barely afford essentials in a lot of places across this country. So it's not really a fact of, oh, these people don't want to get jobs. Sometimes it's a fact of they can't get a job. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting to see how Nicki Minaj tied this into her rap. Maybe I'm being too woke here. Maybe I'm looking too far into it. But again, this is a Nicki Minaj who I think is way more politically conscious than the Nicki Minaj that we see in the 2020s and beyond, which is kind of crazy that she was way more politically conscious as a young person. Might have something to do with that wealth. Now, the next thing on the them.us timeline, because I want to keep promoting that article, guys, this is a really good article, okay? You'll kind of see Nicki test the waters, like I was kind of mentioning earlier, you'll see her test the waters of Donald Trump, saying, quote, there are points he has made that may not have been so horrible if his approach wasn't so childish. Minaj said, but in terms of entertainment, I think he's hilarious. I wish they could just film him running for president. That's the ultimate reality show. And I'll just preface what I say next by the fact that a lot of celebrities and a lot of people in general were kind of echoing similar sentiments at the time. I honestly think the root of a lot of this, the reason why so many people were eager and able to kind of accept Trump's behavior, was because I think people are really sick of a lot of career politicians who have been in political office in some way, shape, or form for years and years and years. Before this, Hillary Clinton has been a senator. She'd also been the vice president. She'd been right hand to Bill Clinton for so many years that people kind of saw her as a legacy politician. And while she did offer, I think, some good campaign lines, I think people were really just looking for something else, looking for something different. And they saw that more so in Donald Trump, despite his many misgivings and many controversies on the campaign trail, which he used to really propel himself. I think he kind of used his persona as a charismatic kind of reality show kind of guy into his presidential campaign, and we still kind of see this behavior even as he's the president, right? Insulting press members, kind of boisterously saying whatever he wants. There's not really any limit. And one thing that I've just kind of came to mind, right, is that we really do see this transition in Nicki Minaj into now, because back in 2010, she was calling out Donald Trump's behavior on The Apprentice. Now Donald Trump is engaging in the same behavior, I would say almost worse than probably what he was doing on The Apprentice, on a national scale. This is the president of the United States, and he's able basically to treat members of the press however he wants, yell at people, scream at people, call them names, call them piggy. And there's no consequences for that. And yet Nicki Minaj seems to have no problem with that and is right behind him and is calling him beautiful, complimenting him. And the crazy thing is that she's doing all of this really for what? For more screen time? Because I really haven't seen Donald Trump shake Nicki Minaj's hand. I haven't seen Donald Trump make a public appearance with Nicki Minaj. That's probably coming, but I'm just saying, like, you're doing all of this, and it seems like you really haven't even got a chance to meet the man. Back to my point about the legacy politicians, I really think that's what won Donald Trump the election over Hillary. There's many other factors, of course. I think it's fair to say that there was likely a level of misogyny involved in that. A lot of people didn't think Hillary Clinton was qualified simply because she was a woman, or took a lot of the problems and the baggage that she had twice as much as they did with Donald Trump's problems and baggage, which I think were very apparent from the beginning with Donald Trump. Then people just kind of glossed over it and really didn't take it seriously and kind of ignored it. But I do think a lot of nuance and a lot of mistakes made by Democrats that I think were repeated in 2024 were really forgotten under the singular point. This idea that the only reason Hillary Clinton lost is because of misogyny, I think doesn't take into account there were so many other things going on. Now, although in 2015, Nicki Minaj would test the waters, she would quickly turn against Trump very vocally, especially as his immigration policies began to become more apparent. We really saw Donald Trump start to engage in very intensive border raids, very intensive detentions. In 2016, she had a verse on Black Beetle saying, "Island girl, Donald Trump want me go home." And like, really, this really, I think, points to the fact that Nicki Minaj was really seen as a anti-Trump rapper. Like, I've seen a lot of people use these clips. A lot of people have used her audios from things like this, but also the Mitt Romney one, as a way to make fun, to poke fun at Republicans, which I find so, like, wild that she went from poking fun at these Republicans, from talking about them, to joining them. She really offered more context as to why she seemed to oppose Donald Trump, and the passion behind her reasons of disliking Trump in 2018 when she wrote in this Instagram post, quote, "I came to this country as an illegal immigrant at 5 years old. I can't imagine the horror of being in a strange place and having my parents stripped away from me at the age of 5. This is so scary to me. Please stop this." Now, a lot of people have talked online about how crazy this makes the current situation, because if you thought Trump's immigration policy was bad in 2016, in 2018, in 2025, there are literally border raids across multiple states, across cities. ICE is coming out, grabbing people with masks on, taking them to detention facilities in different countries, putting them in cages. Like, the amount of heinous and wanton recklessness that ICE is engaging in right now is actually insane, actually crazy. And I think it's crazy that it's kind of normalized, that it's kind of just like, oh yeah, this is what it is. This is normal. When it's like, no, it really isn't. Like, there really is a massive lack of accountability here, especially for cases where there are people who literally are American citizens and are literally just profiled because they look Latino or because they look a certain way and are just instantly seen as, oh, they're possibly illegal immigrants. And it's not just her very open association with Trump. Again, it comes back to that association with Turning Point USA, which she seems to be very down and on board with and happy with. And I'm like, girl, do you see what Turning Point USA is saying about immigrants? Have you seen what Turning Point USA is literally saying about people like you who immigrated to this country illegally in search of a better life? And I just want to talk about this a little bit because I think there is a level of bewilderment, a level of shock, but I do think it also speaks to the fact that when celebrities and people who have like these immense amounts of wealth, it's much more easy to ignore your status as a marginalized person, to ignore your status as a person, like as a marginalized person, as an immigrant, as a woman, as a black woman. It's so much easier to ignore those things and just acknowledge the fact that you are a wealthy person. Like, you admittedly are still going to face a lot of prejudice, right? But there is kind of a level of disconnect, I think, when you become very wealthy, when you become very powerful, where you're able to kind of disconnect yourself from the problems of the common man and see yourself as somebody above that, see yourself as somebody who can't really be touched by that. Like, Nicki Minaj realistically is not going to get deported. Nicki Minaj's family members are realistically not going to be deported because of the access to the immense amounts of wealth that she has. Like, and even if they are, they have the resources, they have the power. Nicki Minaj probably can call up the president. There is a level of privilege there that I think people, especially in Trump world, are able to use and kind of avoid the consequences that the rest of us have to deal with, have to fear. Like, literally some American citizens are being taken, like, and it's just like, okay, oh, we're sorry, we thought you weren't an American citizen. Like, what do you want me to do, hold my passport, my social security number? And now we're entering the 2020s. I know that's been a short turnaround, but I'm just really trying to get through this timeline because I have a lot of other things to talk about. Now we're entering the 2020s with Nicki really still openly supporting Democrats, at least publicly being more liberal-minded and still very much harping against Donald Trump's policies. And then we get to 2020, when Minaj was asked about her feelings on Trump, she responded, quote, she was not going to jump on the Donald Trump bandwagon. I don't like that, she continued. I get that a lot of people don't like him for obvious reasons, but what stuck with me was the children being taken away from their parents when they came into this country. That really bothered me because I was one of those immigrant children coming to America to flee poverty. And I couldn't imagine a little child going through all of that, trying to get to another country because they didn't have money in their country, or whether you're fleeing from war. She said those images are what, quote, really raised my eyebrows. Once again, like, the level of dissonance in 2025 for her to be constantly posting and tweeting about how much she loves Donald Trump, for her to constantly be sharing tweets and posts about how Donald Trump are the good guys and all this stuff. Like, did she really fall for the propaganda that hard? Does she really believe that they're only targeting people who've committed felonies when she actively sees what's going on right now? Or is she just actively in her little bubble, or just focused on her own preservation, on her own well-being, to the point where she's not really seeing the fact that, hey, this is still happening. Like, this is actually probably happening on a much larger scale. Like, I'm really not understanding how it's not clicking to you. Is it not clocking to you? Do you not understand something? Because literally the same exact thing is happening in 2025, and you're sitting there at a Turning Point USA conference saying that young conservatives give you hope. I'm confused. But what comes next, I think, really blows my mind, but it really kind of introduces us to MAGA Minaj. And Nicki Minaj really enters conspiracy theory territory as it pertains to the vaccines. And I think this is a real turning point for her. Get it? It's a pun. In a now infamous 2021 tweet, she writes, quote, my cousin in Trinidad won't get the vaccine because his friend got it and became impotent. His testicles became swollen. His friend was weeks away from getting married. Now the girl called off the wedding, so just pray on it and make sure you're comfortable with your decision, not bullied. Now, I don't want to echo this extremely irresponsible claim without going through the comments, because here are people who actually have medical credentials and people who actually know what they're talking about. Kurt Eichenwald says, sorry, this is not a side effect of the vaccine. It's called hydrocele. In adults, the two primary causes are injury or STD. Probably your cousin's friend was taking one last marriage fling, picked up an STD and is blaming vaccines. He needs an MD stat. when you get an STI and you don't want your girl to know. Here's somebody who says they're an MD, Ashley Winter, and a urologist. I'm a board-certified urologist. The vaccine does not cause orchitis, i.e. swollen. Something else caused that. Tons of data that getting COVID does affect semen parameters and might lead to infertility. Vaccines prevent COVID, misinformation kills. Now, just generally, can we talk about how insanely irresponsible this was? I think we kind of forget that we lived through an extremely traumatizing and disturbing and like very historical medical event, pandemic. COVID-19 is estimated to have killed between 18 million and 33 million people. While on the Wikipedia page, it said there were only 7 million confirmed deaths. I think that's still a lot of people. Not to mention the fact that there are over 700 million confirmed cases, and a lot of people say they have things like long COVID, long kind of complications of that. We're scaring people off from using a vaccine and just parroting this point from a cousin, like using your platform of millions of people. This tweet has over 100,000 likes, meaning it's been seen probably over 1 million times. Multiple millions of people have probably seen this. It literally had New York Times articles, like, and clearly this is not a thing that can happen from a vaccination. I've looked this up, guys. This is not a thing that happened, okay? I didn't really hear more people talking about this because it wasn't a thing. And what really made it worse is that, like, even after it all, after scientific studies were made over the impact that this tweet had on vaccination rates in, like, the Caribbean, Nicki continued to ignore her critics. Nicki continued to double down. Literally, I'm scrolling through, like, the replies of this tweet. All I see is people saying, hey, Nicki, this is not right. This is not something that you should be parroting. This is not something that you should continue to push out, because it's not true. But in 2023, she doubled down, and here's where I think she takes her political turn even more. From 2021, when she said this in a Vogue interview, quote, "I like to make my own assessment of everything without help from everyone." She said, "Every time I talk about politics, people get mad. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be told who I should get on social media and campaign for. There's a lot we don't know that's going on in the government, and I don't think that changes whether you lean to the left or to the right." And I don't think the problem here was asking questions. I think it would have been an entirely different thing. Sure, you could argue it was still harmful, but if she had gone on her platform and even said, like, hey, what is this COVID vaccine about? Or maybe she could have done like a Q&A live with like people. She could find like professors or doctors or somebody who actually has like qualifications, instead of just tweeting, hey, don't get this vaccine, like basically fear mongering. Hey, my cousin's balls exploded after he got this vaccine. Who is going to want to get that vaccine? Do you know how many people are probably cited that as like, oh, I'm not going to get it? There's nothing wrong with questioning things at all, asking people who actually know, asking your medical provider. And I think the problem that really comes with this is the fact that a lot of people don't have access to medical providers. Like, these people are not really openly accessible to the public to ask questions. And like when you do have those public forums, it's kind of like very subtle questions. It might not be a Q&A style. Like when you have the access with your medical provider, it's kind of like, okay, I've waited months to get this like appointment with my doctor. Now I have to pay for it through insurance. Now I have to go through all this stuff. Like, you're not really thinking, oh, can I ask them questions about XYZ? And what fills that void of information that we actually need is kind of these people like me, like Talking Heads Online. I'm not saying I spread this misinformation. Try not to. But it's like, we can talk and talk and talk, but we actually have no idea what we're talking about when it comes to medical things. Like, if you ask me what the legal system is, what the medical system is, like, the only thing I know is like articles online, scientific research. That's what I can pull from. These doctors have years of experience. They know what they're talking about, studies. Like, I think that the internet has really just destroyed our trust of like everybody. And like, yes, you can be skeptical about something, like, right? That's fine. That's fine. You can be skeptical. You can be confused. And like the combination of the skepticism with the lack of access to these people has really led to an upsurge of like people just absolutely deciding not to get any vaccines. And I think that's also harmful because, hey guys, shocker, vaccines were actually invented for a reason, to protect us. We had things like polio, smallpox is coming back. Like, we gotta get back on that train. So now here we are in the modern day, the real turning point of Nicki Minaj, her UN speech. Nicki Minaj spoke at the UN about Christian persecution in Nigeria, echoing much about what Trump has said. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about here when I say Christian oppression in Nigeria, it's been one of the things that Trump has really been harping on. Nigeria is a country that's about evenly split between Christians and Muslims. They currently have a Muslim president who's married to a Christian pastor. It's kind of a country where there is a combination of multiple religions. And of course, sometimes people get into conflict. Firstly, I want to say oppression anywhere is an injustice everywhere, but I think what Nicki Minaj is talking about is a pattern of indiscriminate violence in Nigeria, and a PBS article that I found talks about the ongoing situation. Don't take this by any means as an end-all be-all. Do your own research about this situation ongoing in Nigeria, but when I was looking it up and looking for things, the only things that were popping up were government sources, aka parroting exactly what Donald Trump was saying. Here's what a PBS article and journalists who actually talk to people on the ground are saying. Victims and church leaders echo Trump's claims that Christians are persecuted. They say that they've long been attacked, kidnapped, or killed because of their faith. But many insist the reality isn't as simple as Trump's narrative, which casts Christianity as facing an existential threat in Nigeria. Experts and residents say some attacks target Christians, but most emphasize that the widespread violence that has long plagued the African nation, everyone is a potential victim regardless of background or belief. They don't ask whether you're a Christian or Muslim, 32-year-old Abdul Malik Sadhu said of the gunman regularly stalking his northwestern state, Zamfara. All they want is just money from you. Even if you have money, sometimes they will kill you. Saidu, a Muslim, said his brother was shot dead during a kidnapping operation along a major highway, and the family never recovered his body for fear of attacks. In Kaduna, an Imam told AP that he's lost a grandson, cousin, and brother, and his family has been displaced twice due to violence. Other religious leaders say that mosques have been destroyed, people have fled, and desperate Muslims, like their Christian neighbors, have been forced to sell goods and belongings for a ransom. Now, I'm in no way an expert in geopolitics. I'm not an expert even in like Nigeria, but it seems like a much more complex situation than the narrative that we're kind of being fed by Trump and now Nicki Minaj, that it's just a Christian violence issue, when in reality I think it's a violence issue in general, and that it's not like, yes, there are targeted acts, and I think all of the violence is wrong. The targeted acts on both sides, they're all wrong, but I think the use of existing Islamophobia to turn this into an us versus them thing is really despicable, because the end goal at the end of the day seems to be getting US troops in yet another country. Here's an article by Reuters in which Trump kind of talks about his plans. Asked if he envisioned troops on the ground or airstrikes in Nigeria, Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One, could be, I mean other things. I envisage a lot of things. They're killing record numbers of Christians in Nigeria. They're killing Christians and killing them in very large numbers. We're not going to allow that to happen. So there's kind of this era of, oh, we could have these strikes. There's also been surveillance flights over the country. So I don't know, if the goal is to help these people, wouldn't, donating to them, giving them aid, would like, how is bombing and bringing US troops into a country and invading another country's sovereignty, like, how is that really going to help in the long run? How many US intrusions into other countries, how many of those have actually worked? Look at the past few decades. How many of those have actually been successful operations and actually ended violence in those regions? I can't really think of that many. I really can't. Off the top of my head, I can literally think of none. Now, after this UN speech, which I think Nicki was very much welcomed with open arms in the MAGA world, and then she got into it with Gavin Newsom, and she also decided to glaze. She decided to glaze, out of all people, JD Vance, which I think, like, JD Vance has issues even, like, getting approval within his own party. Why Nicki Minaj is deciding to glaze JD Vance is really beyond me. I don't understand. She keeps doing this over and over again, calling him an assassin and saying he's so slick on his feet and he understands. Like, is it just me, or JD Vance is, like, the least charismatic person on earth? Like, why is Nicki Minaj deciding to just straight up glaze JD Vance? The Vance. The Gav-nots. And then this, just for context on this next tweet, basically, Gavin Newsom in a New York Times article said, quote, I want to see trans kids. I have a trans godson. There's no governor who's signed more pro-trans legislation than I have. No one has been a stronger advocate for the LGBTQ community. Which in response, Nicki said, imagine being the guy wanting to see trans kids. Haha, not even a trans adult would run on that. Normal adults wake up and think they want to see healthy, safe, happy kids. I really appreciate the addition of normal adults, as if there's an adult who is not normal. There's a group of people who are not normal. Totally, like, she's really just sliding into the Republican, like, peg that they've made for her very well. Not Gav, the Gav-nots. Gav out. Send in the next guy. I'm bored. Now, Nicki would have continued to repeatedly tweet about Christian persecution in Nigeria without really elaborating on what's actually happening there. And, if I see Christian persecution, I'm, of course, going to agree, right? But knowing what I know, and knowing that the end goal really seems to be invading Nigeria or getting more US troops involved in Nigeria, and that it might be used to invade another country, like, I'm really, and bomb Nigeria, like, it's just really not clicking to me. Like, I don't understand how that's actually going to help the situation, especially given our track record on multiple other countries. Like, I don't know. I don't think that's going to be a very easy attack You know what I mean? Now, Newsom came back and triggered her by mentioning Megan's Law, a law making sex offenders register on a public registry, as Nicki Minaj's husband, Kenneth Petty, is very much a sex offender. Yeah. Know your neighborhood and protect your community. California's Megan Law website makes it easy to access publicly available information about registered offenders in your area. And I could keep going on for hours and hours talking about how Nicki Minaj's transition into MAGA star has really just like totally shattered my life. But for your sake and my sake, I'm just kind of wrap things up with a little bit of analysis. I might go on a little bit longer than I want to, but you can tune if you want to. I really think this situation again shows that MAGA world is very inclusive to you if you are useful to them in some way. Like if you serve some purpose for them, whether that be financial, whether that be like public PR, I think they will kind of accept you with open arms, even though there is kind of a hesitancy in a lot of conservative spaces. Even just to be a black person in a lot of conservative spaces, you're going to get a lot of flack, let alone a black rapper, a black person who's repeatedly made lyrics. Like we saw what Charlie Kirk was saying about her before she turned conservative. He was saying she was a bad role model. There's a lot of flack that you'll get. But if you're useful to them, they won't say anything. I think Nicki was really useful in this situation because she kind of acted as a spearhead to spread Trump's claims about Nigeria, to act as a way to manufacture consent for potential military action into the country, which is crazy, to make people upset enough to want an invasion. But I think what really allowed Nicki Minaj to be invited into the MAGA fold and to be so useful to them was her fan base. I'm sorry, Barbz. Now, Barbz, look away because I have to talk about this. I'm going to say it. I think Nicki Minaj has a core amount of Barbz. I'm mostly talking about what I've seen from the Twitter Barbz, many of whom are still deciding to stay on the side of Nicki Minaj, even though she literally turned into a Trump supporter. And the thing is, a few months ago, they were saying, oh, Beyonce's a Trump supporter because she was at this dinner and Trump happened to be at the same dinner. But now that Nicki Minaj is openly supporting Trump, it's crickets on that end. A lot of these Barbz will attack when she tells them to attack, defend when she tells them to defend. If you think critically, if you say, wait a minute, why am I bullying this woman online when she literally has done nothing to me? Why are we going after Lotto? Why are we going after SZA? Why are we going after Cardi? Why are we going after Megan? Why are we going after... like, what are we doing? Why are we going after Jay-Z? Why are we going after Beyonce? What are we doing? Like, if you sit down and think and say, wait a minute, like, I just like the music, what's happening to the music, you are ostracized from that core fan base. You're seen as not a real Barb, you're not a real fan, you're not a true believer in Nicki Minaj. And there's also this sense of messiness, this sense of, oh, I always want drama, I always want a gag, that I feel like some Barbs don't really always want what's best for her, which is to kind of get back in the stew and start making some music. They want a gag and they'll constantly push Nicki to look at things or beef with people. Like, why are y'all sending her, oh, Nicki Minaj is still the top rap, like, still has a top rap album when Cardi B came out with her stuff? Why are you sending her things like, oh, Cardi B just overtook Nicki? You know she's gonna crash out. You know she's gonna crash out. And they'll constantly push for beef with new girls, constantly say, oh, this new girl said this new girl said that. And it's like, bro, can we chill? Can we actually calm down and chill? Like, why was she beefing with SZA? Can we talk about that? It's just so sad to see Nicki Minaj's transition from a woman who openly called out misogyny, who openly stood against inequality, to a woman who will defend her predator husband at any chance she gets. And there has been a lot of talk about how people are just now getting done with Nicki Minaj. I'll say that I've been done with Nicki Minaj for quite a while. Really, the last nails in the coffin were the Bigfoot saga and the beef with Megan Thee Stallion. If you don't know, Megan Thee Stallion was shot by Tory Lanez, proved in a court of law. Like, y'all can argue with the wall. That's what happened, okay? And somehow Nicki Minaj and Megan Thee Stallion fell out. Some people will say it's because Megan wanted her to drink when she was pregnant with Papa Bear. I have no idea if that's true. That's what they say. I would take that with a grain of salt because literally, why would that be that much of an issue? Anyways, they start beefing. Megan brings up Megan's Law. And Nicki Minaj crashes out, going on a multiple-day tirade, coming against Megan, saying, get up on your good foot, while simultaneously saying that Megan was never shot and that she's lying. I think that was really another turning point, like, because she really just lost it there. She really just lost it there, and she had to turn into her core fan base of the Barbs, who still stood behind her, even though she was literally bullying this woman, Megan. Like, yes, Megan came at her and said Megan's Law, but Nicki for months had been saying, I don't mess with horses, all this shady stuff. Like, it had all been leading up into this moment. Megan finally comes back, and it's a gag, okay? And Bigfoot was horrible. Bigfoot was trash. It was bad. You can argue with the wall. It was actually terrible, okay? But yeah, that's pretty much all from me. The downfall of Nicki has been really just a marvel and insane to watch. And I don't know, I just can't. It's all sad, but thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end of the video, consider liking, consider subscribing. That's all I have for you. Happy holidays, everybody. Me and this flamingo, we've been talking for about 40 minutes now, and we're gonna go to bed because it is very late at night. But I will see you all next time. Have a great winter. Have a great end of December. I don't know. Bye.